Oh, okay.
This John.
That's okay.
Okay, somebody, John.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bedminster Township Committee meeting for February 4th. Recognize a quorum. Committeeman Hickey is homesick with the flu, so he is an excused absence. And Judy, can we have the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, sir. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville, to the Burnsville News in Whippany, and to all subscribers, and also posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 7th, 2019.
Great. Everyone, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Keep that. Okay, first thing up is the approval of minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to look at the January 22nd regular Township Committee meeting minutes and the executive session?
Committeewoman Zareski did find an error. Mayor Parker's name was in one of the sets of minutes by mistake, so I had a good catch. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
One other nitpicky thing, just stylistically, you got it. On the closed session meeting minutes, it's just on the third line, there's no caps in there, just stylistic. Nothing substantive. Closed session minutes, third line after Hickey, just lowercase there.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Other than that, it's fine.
Got it.
So with those changes?
Yeah, move to approve the minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Permits and raffles, we have two. Two tonight. Our raffle license for Mainstream, raffle to be held June 8, 2019 at Redtail Farm, 1100 Rattlesnake Bridge Road, off premises 50/50. And the second is special use permit, emergency temporary classroom trailers at Grace Fellowship Chapel.
They have actually withdrawn their application. They believe they're going to be able to make the repairs sooner than they thought. So,
Okay, so no special use
they'd
permit?
like to defer that, maybe for next time if things don't go well for them. But right now,
So they think they'll be in time?
we've asked for it to be held.
Okay, so it's only the raffle license for Mainstream. We have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming. Twice each night we open that microphone and that lectern up there for public comments. If any member of the public has any comments on any matter that is not otherwise on the agenda, now is a good opportunity to do so. There will be a second bite of the apple later on in the evening. So if you want to come on up, come on up. Mary Jane, you've raised your hand.
My hand. It's so nice to watch these on the video at home, but this is important. I realize you people. You want my name?
I know you, but for the record, that'd be great.
Yes, okay. Mary Jane Fennell, 162 Hillside Avenue, Bedminster.
Is the microphone
Yeah.
working? Can anybody hear out there? No? We're going to fix that.
It's not on?
Hold on 1 second, Mary Jane.
I'll put this one here.
Oh, thank you. Is that good? Okay. I realize some of you are relatively new to the committee, and of course we have a new mayor. So I went back over the 20-year history of the African burying ground on Hillside. Now, if you want the synopsis, I can print it out to you, but there are a few important things I'd like to address. And number one is, I read in the newspaper that the reason you're selling this adjacent property to private owners is because the town had 2 public auctions. Now, I remember one but I had to go to the Ann O'Brien Library to find out the other one. That was in 2005. And they were also going to sell the slave cemetery. And the old town hall was on there, and the asking price was over $300,000. Now guess what? The Township Committee at that time was amazed that nobody came forward. Now let's fast forward to 2011, the second public auction, still with the slave cemetery included, and the old town hall building on it. Asking price, $255,000. Nobody showed up. Now you're going to sell the whole thing for under $36,000. There's something wrong. What's going on? I want to know what's happening. And of course, you know, or at least you should know, that I offered to buy that property. I want to be part of the buying process. And I believe that the Township Committee, although you're all mostly new, you should rethink what you're doing with this. And I would request that you halt the negotiations, whatever stage they're in, open it to anyone who wants to buy it, including me. And the other thing is, you know, there's several things you could do with it. We all pay open space tax. Why don't you take that little piece and give it to Hillside Avenue? Although it's not well maintained, it's certainly better than when the old town hall was there. And if you don't want to buy it, if you don't want to get a grant and leave it in open space, let a nonprofit take it over and maintain it. Or I can buy it and I'll take care of it. But I am here to ask you to rethink what you're doing in selling that property for certainly below value. And when did an acre in Bedminster become worth $58,000? My land has 2.3 acres. It's assessed at over $300,000. There's a lot of funny things going on here. And I would hope you would take the time and effort to look into it and rethink selling it to two adjacent property owners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary Jane. Microphone still available for public comment?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ray Daniels, and I'm with the Tri-City NAACP, which includes the overall summit area, including Springfield, New Providence, Berkeley Heights, Watchung, and everything on the upper tier of 22 all the way to Warren and Huntington County. So we have quite a territory to cover for the NAACP. The NAACP is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And I'm here, and there's going to be some probably in the second session, a couple of people that would also like to talk. But I'm here on behalf of the interest in the African burial ground, in which I've been involved for 5 years, and I think, Mr. Mayor, I think I met you last year at one of our celebrations that we have each year on the on the day that the purchase was originally done, which was June 22nd in the early 1800s. We're here as a group, and you know, the NAACP, you may not know, the NAACP is a civil rights organization, 5013C corporation. We're the largest civil rights organization in the world. We have in the state of New Jersey 40 branches and 40 adult branches and some 27 youth and college division branches. We have been here for a long time. The Summit Area Branch is 97 years old as of February 12th this year. So we have been around a long time in this particular area. But again, our concern as a group is to preserve the sanctity of God's acre acres, as it's called, which is the African or slave burial ground just up the hill here. We are concerned that we preserve the sanctity of the burial ground, the area where our ancestors, slaves, purchased that for little or nothing, and as a cemetery for the slaves and freed persons at that point in time that were in this area of Somerset County. We are asking that the committee really, as Mrs. Fennell says, and we're here also to support her too as well, is that the committee delay the finalization of the sale of those properties so that where the old, really the site of the old town hall, to allow our group as well as some others and other concerned citizens the opportunity to investigate some alternatives that I think will be good for the township as well as good for maintaining the sanctity of the African burial ground. And those, we need a little time. This was a little surprise to us that after we had received last year the resolution that really established that as authentically established that as a burial ground, even though we've not had any sonograms, etc., which we as an organization would have wanted to underwrite it at no expense to the township. But again, what we're asking for now is just to postpone or either to delay, to give us an opportunity to come up with some alternatives that we could present to the township committee, and that would not desecrate this sacred burial ground, which means a lot to African Americans, and especially in today's area where we've had an emergence of historical sites, especially in New Jersey, that is worthy of being commemorated and is worthy of being set aside for the sanctity of our African ancestors who are buried therein. So again, our request is a simple one, is that you're allowed to continue as, give us time so that we might be able to give some proposals. The one that I know that we were anticipating, and I had talked to a lot of people basically on the state level as well as national level, to designate the property as a National Historic Site. And even though we have not completed all the paperwork for it, but from the state level as well as the national level, they are interested in entertaining such a proposal. So on this anniversary, the other thing that we would like to do too as well is that for the last 4 years, we have had a ceremony that was commemorating the day that the land was purchased, and that's June 22nd. We would like to, regardless of what happens, we would like to continue that one-day celebration. We've had it for the last 4 years, even including when they first did this, that it wasn't, African Americans were not even informed, even though that we had been before this council, that the ceremony where they had the unveiling of the sign, the marker, we weren't even invited to do this. We just heard by word of mouth, and we just happened to come up, not with anything official that we received from anything. So we weren't even in the loop, even though that we had been in this chamber at least twice to talk about the burial ground. So the second thing I would like to ask is that we will be given the opportunity to continue that. And we have, as a group of 3 or 4 branches in this area, including Morristown, including Plainfield, and including Tri-City, and our New Brunswick Somerset County branch, to continue with this, so that we will be able to commemorate our fallen slaves and brothers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Brown. I'm a Mendham Township resident. I am the president of the Morris County NAACP branch. We have over 600 members in our branch. I'm a little concerned because everything that Mr. Rayford Daniels has said is true. A few of us in the audience have attended the meetings to pretty much give reverence and all due respect to the bodies in the cemetery. And I think that, and just so you know as well, I'm also the chairwoman for the Mendham Township Historic Preservation Committee. So all of this is interrelated. So, and past real estate person. So I don't know how those numbers came up. We just had some auctions in our town as well. But none of that really matters when you have a burial ground, a sacred ground that we should all respect. And we had to approach, and thank goodness we heard about this because it is Black History Month. How fitting is it for us to be up here and to talk about it? I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to discuss this with you. And I want you to take that time to really think about it as you hear our stories. But just consider if it were your family members laying there. And you have to think, well, the cemetery may be this space, but I could almost bet that if you start digging around, you may start to find some other bones and bodies around, because I know it says 0.66 or something to that nature, but living in Morris County for the past 22 years, I don't see lots that size. So it could well have been an acre and just got cut back and paperwork got lost, and but we're here in support of you doing the right thing, not selling this land. It is sacred. I think if you had to, you could even sell it to us for $1. It's that sacred, and let us use the rest of the funds to maintain it, pledge to do so. Many of us have a foundational church, if you will, that would also assist with that and make sure we keep it clean. If maintaining it is a problem for the town and that's why you want to sell it, then by all means. And I think the buyers of that property, I'm not sure if they know the history of it. I mean, who would really want to put a house right there on the cemetery? I mean, it makes no sense to me. So it's almost like somebody had some ulterior motive or was planning to do this or whatever. So I just want you to find it in your hearts, in your minds, your conscience, this Black History Month. Do the right thing by this cemetery. It was a free man and 2 slaves. Thought it was not robbery to set aside some property to bury the people who could not be buried in any other cemetery. And in the climate that we're in today, we find ourselves in that situation again. That's what it looks like, doesn't it? So let's not have that. Just be a little more compassionate and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Nancy Pivar. I live in Plainfield, and what I don't want to get lost in this story, it's not just a story about the land, it's a story about the man, Robert Aaron. I did a lot of research, I'm still finding research on this man, and for the new committee people here, just a quick overview is he was a freeholder. He owned 50 pounds worth of land, and that entitled him to vote. And he voted even before Thomas Mundy Peterson, before the state of New Jersey took the right to vote away from women and to African Americans. He voted in your municipal elections. He paid taxes in Bedminster. After he died, his wife paid taxes in Bedminster. That's even more significant. An African-American woman paid taxes in Bedminster. He was friends with a lot of Revolutionary War heroes, and they signed off on his will and witnesses' will. And recently I found another record that I just found it, that he was a contributor to the Bedminster Dutch Reformed Church. And at the time, he gave $1.50. Well, if you think about it, it doesn't seem like a lot of money today, but that equals to like $20 every time the church basket went around. So I just want you to understand, in my perspective, it's really a story about an African-American man who made good and helped all the farmers in this area because he was a beekeeper. And a beekeeper at that time was significant for the agriculture and helped these farmers fertilize their crops, because without him, they didn't have the crops. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. And for those up here, Nancy did a tremendous presentation earlier this year, and she did another presentation actually at the burial ground talking about Robert Aaron, his life as a beekeeper. Ms. Pewar actually ran through all the details of Robert Aaron's will and what he left behind. And what he left behind was substantial, right? This is not a man of insignificant means. He actually left a fair amount for the community and for his family. So Nancy, once again, thank you for your research.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. Hello, Mayor and Council and all members who are here tonight. I'm Sharon Robinson Briggs. I'm the former mayor of Plainfield, New Jersey. I'm also the current first vice president of the Plainfield area NAACP, and I'm the third vice president of the New Jersey State Conference of NAACP branches with some 1,000 members statewide. I want to thank you all for this opportunity, not just for myself, but for the others who have come before you and for those who will come before you, because this is a very, very sensitive issue for many people. I'm speaking on behalf of NAACPers as well as stakeholders, and thank you so much for allowing a beautiful plaque to be dedicated to God's Acre. This is a sacred location that your fine municipality is absolutely blessed to have. And this African-American sacred burial ground represents all of our history, not just Black history or Black American history, but all of our history. So please continue to preserve this final resting place. It's really important, and as some who have spoken before me, and pardon me for walking in after the session began, I took one wrong turn off of 202, and there you have it. But I'm so happy to have made it here tonight and to have the opportunity to address you again, as I did a few years back. It's so sacred, a final resting place. I can't imagine the possibility of anybody's relative being dug up or uprooted, or the final resting place being disturbed. It's a matter of honor, it's a matter of respect, and it's a matter of you wanting to continue to do what you've been doing, which was the right thing. And so I'm asking, and I apologize if it's already been requested, since I did walk in a few minutes after you started, but I'm asking on behalf of everyone, if you would please postpone any sale of the lots for at least 6 months, to give an opportunity for there to be the proper scanning, to make sure that the grounds haven't shifted, there are no markers to delineate exactly where bodies are located, and we just want to make sure to preserve final resting places and to continue to honor those who were buried before us, and to continue to just have a really good relationship with this municipality, and to just to continue in the right vein. And I'm just really asking you to please consider what your thought is, and to please consider not selling the lots. And if you need to sell the lots, please consider postponing that sale for a while, until such time that we are all absolutely positively sure that there are no remains of somebody's relatives buried underneath that land. If it's to be sold, we know that The ground is frozen right now or pretty hard, and so a developer wouldn't be able to do something for a while anyway. So it's not really asking too much, I feel, of a developer to wait some time to be absolutely certain. Because I've read different articles throughout New Jersey and throughout New York of developers who have actually begun a project and only to discover bones. And I'm sure some of you have probably read some of those articles, and that's totally disheartening. I can only imagine the contractors themselves, I'm sure, would probably feel horrible if something like that was to happen here in Bedminster. So if it could be postponed for at least 6 months, and allowing for the testing to take place. And as Mr. Daniels said, we do every year. We appreciate the opportunity to come here on June 22nd and have a very wonderful open to the community ceremony, which marks the spot and marks the occasion. It's a very respectful tribute to those who are buried there, and to say thank you again to Bedminster for allowing the plaque to be erected and for allowing such a wonderful event to take place annually. I don't know for a fact, only you know, but are there discretionary funds that might be available for such a scanning through the municipality? Would the municipality like to enter into maybe some sort of an agreement for a sale? Would the municipality like to think in terms of having many of the folks who are seated behind me do some research to find a company that could do such a scan? I myself have reached out to a few companies, but I found out that the companies that I contacted, they only do scans and sweeps for oil tanks. And so I said, nope, that's not what we're thinking about in this particular situation. So there are options and there are ways to reach a happy medium, and I just hope and pray that you all will please consider or reconsider what has been discussed at a previous meeting, and just really think about what we're talking about, a sacred burial ground. Okay. So I thank you so very much for the opportunity to come before you. We look forward to coming back up on June 22nd, and hopefully all of you will come on out and celebrate with us, because again, this sacred burial ground is representative of all of our history. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson Briggs. Y'all excuse my coughing, please. Any further comments?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This one. Good evening. Stacey Greg, Rockaway Township. I recognize a few of your faces from the June 22nd. How many of you were there, actually? Was anybody up there besides Mr. Jacobs? The rest of you didn't come?
In the past years, I think, in the very beginning.
We had the dedication and the unveiling of the placard on June 22nd, so you did miss that.
Way back in...
No, it's this past June.
Just this past June. I unfortunately wasn't able to go. No.
You would have enjoyed it.
I'm sure.
Possibly. You're smiling throughout these proceedings. I am not smiling. I am in shock. I have been called a professional agitator. I'll wear that with pride. I've been going out through the council meetings throughout Morris County, throughout New Jersey, with incidences of discrimination, racism. I'm sad to find out that the middle afternoon I found out about this meeting and what is happening here tonight. And I have been a lifelong member of joining up my children to the NAACP. I'm also an ex-Action VP of the National Organization for Women of New Jersey. If you don't know who I am, if you've all lived here in Bedminster, I'm the lady that's been setting up the Stop Racism signs around Trump Free Speech Zone at the library. Are you aware that was going on in your town? You're all aware, right? We had the red sign, Stop Racism. For this meeting to happen, the month of Black History Month, with notification to the community, is an outrage. There's no press here tonight that I can see. I see a very white representation up there. I feel like it was a slap in the face to the community and all the good work that the NAACPs have done across the state. This has been going on for years, trying to preserve this cemetery and get recognition and get that plaque up there. I have a family member who's been all invested in trying to make that happen, and the discovery of some of the bones and getting it documented. Bedminster is right now an infamous name in the United States of America. Infamous because of one of your residents here. And you're going to go and do this and even contemplate it and not apologize? And I can't believe the meeting's only 20 minutes in. And you're saying, it's not a joke, this isn't funny, this isn't something to smile through. This is a travesty. And I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for my nation. I'm embarrassed what you're doing. $58,000 for a half an acre in Bedminster. You're going to sell it to some developer to build on top of the graves of human beings. How many of you live on the top of the graves of human beings? Any of you? I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that this goes on one more meeting. And I urge you to take action. I don't know how this came to be, but you need to stop it. Congratulations, I guess you're the new mayor. Didn't realize that, but I am appalled. And I am so impressed by the people that came before me. I agree with everything they said. Their decorum was much more acceptable than mine, because I can't hide my anger. I'm furious. And you do this, trust me, I will spend the rest of my life letting people know about what you did in the United States. I will be contacting Rachel Maddow. I will be contacting NBC, CNN, whoever it takes. Bedminster's not going to be not known for what's gone on here. This is ridiculous. I would urge you to make a motion and put this away. Come up with the funds. What would it cost your residents on their tax bill to pay $58,000 towards whatever it is, whoever you're paying to get the acreage? Less than an acre, a famous acre. You came and you listened to the stories. You were there. Thank you for being there on June 22nd. It's my deceased husband's birthday. It's a significant day. It was a significant day for everybody who showed up on that day. So not to go over my time, but I really urge you to stop it and stop it now and not consider selling the sacred property to anybody. Thank you.
Microphone is still open. Well, thank you all for coming out and expressing your opinions and your positions on the sale of the property. When we were considering actually identifying the property, and this goes back to my first year on Township Committee in 2011. No, actually it was after that. One of the questions that came up was, well, where is that 1/10 of an acre, right? Did we have comfort and confidence in where it was? And that was a question that we had posed to the Township Committee, to our own professionals, looking at the deeds, which are very specific, and actually looking at the markers, which were specific, looking at not just the original deed, but all the subsequent deeds, making reference to where the 1/10 of an acre was. In discussions with our own engineer and surveyor, that 1/10 of an acre was identified. That 1/10 of an acre was carved off from the property that had been the municipal, the former town hall, actually. So immediately behind that 1/10 of an acre was the old municipal building, which had been constructed in the 1930s and had been excavated, and there was a foundation system underneath it, a basement behind it, and property that, excuse me, that went all the way to the back. There had been a house that was actually the Dow family, which the Dow family was the property, that was the family that actually sold the property for the municipal building in the 1930s to Bedminster. So the Dow family owned the property around the 1/10 of an acre, of God's acre, and there was a house and a driveway there at the time, and that property ended up being mixed in with the burial ground at that time, which in the 1930s, the deed was already identified as no markers. in the 1880s in the Melick book, identified the property as God's Acre, and also talked about the property as how it looked at that time. So there was a fair amount of historical research that we did in our own assessments, that the town had comfort in identifying where the property was, carving that tenth of an acre off the rest of the property that had already been developed and already situated, the municipal complex. So there was great confidence in where the property was and where the tenth of an acre. And certainly agree with all the sentiments here that it is important, and not just to the African American community, but to the New Jersey and Bedminster community, to preserve that property. And this town and Committeewoman Santucci, through the Historic Preservation, took all those efforts, did the research, and I did some of that research with Mayor Parker at the time, and we went back to the Ann O'Brien room looking for just not where it was, but what it was situated, what it looked like at the time. And we came back, and absolutely it was Mayor Robinson Briggs. I remember your presentation at that night, and there was great sentiment within the room to preserve the property and mark it not just for the burying ground itself, but for that important historical element, that the property was bought by 3 African Americans, 1 free and 2 slaves, I believe, Robert Aaron being the freeman who purchased it. And at the time, it was rare that African Americans bought land, period, or slaves were involved in any real estate transactions. It was even more rare where the purchase was dedicated specifically for the purpose of a burying ground. And as far as we know, and Nancy, I'm not sure if you've done additional research, but the only incident in New Jersey where slaves participated in buying property specifically for the purpose of burying. That was all evaluated, assessed, coordinated with the county in making sure that it was properly demarcated and properly recognized with the language, and there was a fair amount of back and forth with the county and the Historical Preservation Commissions to make sure the language on the marker was appropriate, and that we on the Bedminster Township side made sure that we took the efforts to preserve that property. But as far as the purposes of the area around it, which had been a municipal building, had been excavated, constructed before, there had been a driveway and a house on all sides. Hillside Avenue is where Hillside Avenue has always been. And the markers are still there to identify where that property is. So when we asked our engineer to look at it, it wasn't maybe it's here, it was it's here. These are the dimensions. And being an engineer and surveyor with expertise in this area, he had great comfort in looking at the historical research and the historical documents to identify that and make that conclusive determination back to the Township Committee. There's also been discussions that we've heard that it's going to be developed. Well, actually, that's not the case at all. This is being sold as 2 undevelopable properties. And, you know, if, John, you want to run through the legal assessment of how municipalities sell off undevelopable land, that it can be sold to adjacent properties and only to those adjacent property owners for the purposes of adding land onto their backyards. But this is not being sold to a developer. It is not, there's no ability to construct a separate parcel here with a house or anything else along those lines. So there are some, I hope that clarifies some of those indications out there. As for Mr. Daniels and Mayor Robinson Briggs and Ms. Brown, you also identified the value of having the event on June 22nd every, excuse me, every year. I agree. If there's something that we can do to formalize that date and provide opportunity for you to come out there every year on June 22nd for the commemoration ceremony, you will find a willing participant with this township committee, because it is important for not just African American, but for the entire community, especially here in Bedminster. In some of the papers, we've had discussions about what the historical significance is to other people, right? What does that property mean? In discussions with the Star Ledger that we had, and in prior discussions, I think, Charlie, certainly with the Burnsville News, that property is a recognition that slavery was not something that was far away. It wasn't something that was so remote to be disconnected from where we live today, that the folks who lived in New Jersey and Bedminster particularly were immune to slavery. Not the case at all. That property being sold, please, Nancy, you can correct me if it's 1801 or 1803? 1801? The property being sold in 1801.
Yeah, 1801.
1801. So that was several years past the Revolution. We're now in the 19th century. And slavery was still here in New Jersey. To me, I look at that marker, which is right across the street from my house, and I look at that, and that, to me, is a tremendous reminder that it was not distant, it was not down in the South only, but it was here, locally. And I think that is a great recollection and memory for everyone in Bedminster who drives by it, sees it, to acknowledge it, and look at what the committee did in working with a lot of you to make sure that site is commemorated. John, if you do want to talk about the transaction itself.
Yes, Mayor. My understanding is that it is a lot upon, as you indicated, that the municipal building sat and was owned by Bedminster Township since 1935. There were a few efforts to sell it by public auction that were unsuccessful. The lot is approximately, I think, 0.66 acres, give or take, if I remember off the top of my head. So it is below the size of 1 acre, which is the minimum lot size for the zone. It is not a developable lot because it's not an acre. It's probably one of the reasons why it was not sold at public auction. The local land and buildings law allows a municipality, since it's an undersized lot for the zone, to sell that to adjoining property owners. In this particular instance, there were discussions with all the contiguous, it has to be a contiguous property owner. Two of the owners expressed an interest, the Nicholsons and the Andersons, in acquiring a part of that 0.66 acres to add to their backyards or yards. It has to be sold at fair market value, even though it's now only going to be a half or such of 0.66 acres, whatever the sizes are. It's not exactly 1/2. Our tax assessor, Ed Kerwin, looked at the property, came up with a fair market value for each of those two remaining lots. The adjoining owners are paying the fair market value. There was an ordinance that authorized the land to be subdivided. The land has been subdivided into 2 separate parcels. There are binding contracts that were approved by this committee with the 2 adjoining landowners, and we are in the process of heading toward a closing, because we have 2 binding contracts with these landowners as soon as we're out of our due diligence period with respect to title and other matters. So it's a relatively straightforward transaction. It, as your honor indicated, it completely excludes the burial ground. That has absolutely nothing to do with this particular transaction or transactions.
Okay, thank you, John. Moving on to monthly report discussions by subcommittee chairs. We'll start to the right with Committeeman Stevenson.
I have no updates.
Thank you. Unfortunately, my committees haven't met, so I have no updates Either.
Okay.
Mayor, thank you. Do you want to do the farmer's market?
Oh, sure. So just so everyone knows that, I guess, was it last week? It was last week. So last week, Renee and I attended the inaugural meeting of the Farmers Market Committee and preparing for the farmers market season for coming up for 2019, identifying what worked last year, where we can make improvements from last year, and looking at, once again, curating the type of vendors who would attend and participate in the farmers market. The focus remaining on local agricultural product, sticking within a 10 to maybe 15-mile radius of Bedminster. That gave us a pretty good showing from last year. And sticking with that, we also looked at the charges that we would put on the vendors. Last year, there was no charge for participating in the farmers market. This year, we do anticipate collecting some revenue from the vendors so that we can properly market, publicize, and continue the efforts in promoting the farmers market, which is a big, important element of having a successful market. So that was the first meeting. There will be a few meetings coming up, and we hope to narrow down the vendor list within the coming weeks. And that's it for subcommittee reports. And we will head to administrator's report with Judy.
I don't really have anything tonight.
Okay. Well, this is part of administrator's report, but I do want to talk about it now. Earlier this afternoon, I did receive an email with 2 letters. This was from the manager of the Hills Highlands Master Association, and it was recognizing the good work done by Sergeant Nancy Ariel and by our own fire official, Tom Anderson, for going out to the folks at Hills Highlands, talking to them about public safety concerns. And, it's something that we do in Bedminster often, but it's not often that we actually receive letters thanking our folks formally for participation. So I'll pass it along so everyone can read it. Chief, I'm sure you're actually addressed for the one for Sergeant Ariel, and if you don't get it, I will forward it to you. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Discussion on introduced ordinances, we have none. Introduction of ordinances, we have none. Public hearing of ordinances, we have none. We have a consent agenda. Are there any concerns or questions regarding the items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, can we have a motion to move forward with the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
This is roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mr. Nureski?
Aye.
Mayor Park?
Mayor Park. See, that's how it ends up in the minutes
I
that
know.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 resolutions that are up for tonight that are not on the consent agenda. And we'll start with Resolution 19025. Yeah, we're going to take that one off, yeah. Which is a resolution authorizing a liquor license, change of corporate structure for the liquor license of the premises Delicious Heights Enterprises Corp.
So one of the, this is a liquor license held by Delicious Heights, culinary retail license at the restaurant. This is just a change in corporate structure. One of the partners has stepped away from the partnership, and the other remaining partners will continue. So it's just more of a filing of proper paperwork. There was a complete investigation performed by our ABC officer with the police department. Did work with Delicious Heights attorney to provide all the correct paperwork and applications and fees, which they have prepared. They have to be also noticed in the newspaper, which they have done. They completed all the requirements. So at this point, the only remaining item is an approval, and this is just more of a business transaction.
Okay, and Chief, this triggers the same investigation and review that an initial license application would require?
Mayor, it's more than, it's a removal of one of the partners that held the license, and the license period obviously is from July 1st through June 30th. So it's a matter of, it's more of a removal, so it's not the full-blown investigation, because the two players are still in play that had their name on the original license. So they're just removing one of the parties from the license.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee on the resolution?
Did Trenton have to get notified?
The application will go down to Trenton with our approval, and they'll take the next step.
We need a motion one way or the other.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Again, this is a roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move ahead to Resolution 2019-028. We're going to come back to Resolution 2019-027 after executive session. Resolution 2019-028, authorize emergency temporary appropriations in the current fund in the total amount of $5,000.
So this time of year, we're working on a temporary budget, which is 26.5% of last year's budget until we actually adopt our new budget for 2019. So we're working on temporary funds. We usually, that 25% will get us through the first 3-4 months of the year. However, in the computer line, with a lot of the renewals of all of our software agreements and maintenance agreements, that line ran out quickly. So this is to transfer some additional monies. It's really no more than what would have been in the 2019 budget anyway. It's just we're going to fund it with a little bit extra than the 25% or 26.5%.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 2019-028.
Second.
Again, roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
And Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Approve the bill list pending review of the individual invoices. Can we have a motion to approve the bill list?
So moved.
Second.
Again, roll call. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye. Okay, moving on to discussion items. Do we have anything that the committee members would like to discuss?
Nothing. No, Mayor?
Okay, seeing none, new business. So we do have new business tonight. One of our township residents is being honored, and we have a resolution. Judy, I'm going to do my best to read through this without coughing too much. So I will, let me read off this resolution. Whereas the Somerset County Commission on the Status of Women is honoring women in celebration of Women's History Month in Somerset County for their significant contributions to women's causes in their professional fields or in community endeavors. Whereas over 7 years ago, Jacqueline C. Morales took a career path that led her to be Director of Tourism for the Somerset County Business Partnership, where she was responsible for carrying out a comprehensive destination marketing strategy for Somerset County. And whereas during her time as Director of Tourism, Ms. Morales has overseen an average increase in county tourism industry revenues of 4% per year, while playing a principal role on the Somerset County Brand Development Initiative and the Somerset County Employer Resource Team. And whereas despite numerous funding challenges, Ms. Morales has successfully built a destination marketing organization for Somerset County, seeking unique solutions to develop visitor services and publications, such as the county's Destination Guide, while being an active member of Destinations International, a board member of the New Jersey Association of Destination Marketing Organizations, and while serving as Vice President on the board of the New Jersey Travel Industry Association. And whereas this dedicated volunteer has been active in her community as a member of the Raritan Valley Mothers of Multiples, a nonprofit organization which serves at-risk children, babies born prematurely, and families of multiples by participating in various fundraising events. And whereas Ms. Morales also serves on the trustee board of Arts on Division, a 501c3 that is dedicated to building community through the arts and arts education, and has been instrumental in the development of new strategies for engaging the local community through arts at the Tour of Somerville. And therefore, be it resolved that Jacqueline C. Morales has been chosen by the Somerset County Commission on the Status of Women in the category of Business Entrepreneurs Information Technology, and will be honored at their annual awards dinner on March 29, 2019. And be it further resolved that the Township Committee of the Township of Bedminster joins with the Commission on the Status of Women and congratulates Jacqueline C. Morales on her many contributions to her community as both a leader and a businesswoman, and her designation as one of Somerset County's outstanding women for 2019. So that's a resolution, and this will be presented to our resident Jacqueline C. Morales at the Somerset County event later this year. So thank you, Judy, for putting that together. Old business. So there are a few old business items, one of which is particularly concerned for this night. Quickly, on just a quick update on short-term rentals. Committeeman Stevenson, any update?
No update. That's really reportable. We continue to monitor the sites and keep getting leads on some short-term rentals, and we continue to send notices out, but nothing in the hopper, so to speak.
Right. So there has been some action taken by the Township Committee. Judy, is that complaint-driven?
Yes, we normally, we've had a number of contacts from residents, checking websites, or hear from a neighbor, or they'll hear a rumor and they'll notify us, and we investigate. Sometimes it's something we need to take action on, sometimes it's not.
So once again, this is not, on our own where we're looking for finding these issues. It's complaint-driven. So when there are complaints come in, so when the complaints come in, then there's action by staff. Engine braking. The engine braking sign is up again on Route 206, and we've already received very great positive feedback from residents about putting that sign back up, and there's been, at least what's being reported to us, an indication of more quiet than there had been without the sign being present. Folks know that the sign is portable, it's temporary, and will be relocated throughout town as required, but now it appears to be doing its job. Permission to use the right-of-way over at Tuttle Ave. John, any updates?
Moving forward very quickly, Mayor, a draft has been put together by my colleague Joe Sardillo. That was, I think, as your honor is aware, circulated last week. We have comments back from Paul Ferrero. I've authorized Joe at this particular point in time to send that out to the 3 property owners tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And so moving forward very quickly on that.
So the last item on old business is Puffin Park. So during campaign season, we've walked through that complex numerous times, and this last time, just noticed the quality of the roadway. Lighting, handrails by stairs that were loose, and we had asked at that time to send some inspections over, both from construction and zoning, to evaluate the condition of the property and put it back into our hand from an enforcement perspective to identify what's wrong. I mean, just so everyone knows, Puffin Park is it is affordable, it is age restricted, and these are folks who they need the township to help, because we don't know that on its own the landlord would make those improvements, since it has been in that condition for a while. So, Judy, I see 2 emails here. If you could just quickly give us an update of where Jeff and Joe Haggerty stand.
At our last meeting, you asked me to reach out to Construction and Zoning to do a follow-up. They had done their own inspection as well, I would say probably about a month ago, or even 2 months ago. Identified a number of areas that needed to be corrected and repaired. They met with the people in charge over at Puffin Park and explained to them what needed to be done, kind of set a priority list. There was a punch list created. They were given a time frame when it needed to be completed. It just coincidentally, code enforcement and zoning went out last week, did another full inspection, and identified that, you know, the time was going to end and the improvements were not being done, the repairs were not made. So you'll see before you there's a list of a number of violations. In other words, they were given, you know, fix them, you're on notice of violation, you need to fix them in the time frame. If they don't, then it becomes an actual violation with a summons, and then there's penalties that follow. So that's where we are now. We reached out to the property owner who, you know, suddenly now wants to jump on it, but, you know, how much time? It seems nothing is done until a summons is threatened.
These are not particularly big fixes, are they?
No.
So what are the next steps from enforcement? And you know, I guess
so
John, what?
Yeah, there can be fines that are imposed.
I'm just learning of this.
Yeah.
Tonight, so they will have the opportunity to appeal it to the Construction Board of Appeals if they disagree with the, just looking at the summonses now.
Would that be after fines are assessed? I mean, fines have not been assessed
No,
yet.
it's not.
They have a, typically when a notice goes out, there's a appeal period in which they can appeal this to the Construction Board of Appeals. Occasionally we've gone down to Somerville on these types of matters, but not recently. So there's a process involved under the Uniform Construction Code.
Right, so that's where we are right now.
Okay, this is, you know, the response from the landlord has been disappointing. And, you know, I feel that, you know, I see Committeeman Stevenson nodding his head that I think from our position that we're losing patience with the fact that we've got a landlord that has, I don't want to say, is it fair to say that whether they've been disregarded, they just haven't been implemented,
Right.
without any excuses or any other indications from the property owner?
Not that I'm aware of, no real
Okay.
This is health and safety, and I think enough is enough here. So whatever we need to do to push them to do the right thing, we need to do.
The date of the letter is just, I think, last Thursday or Friday.
Okay. All right, so we keep this on the agenda. In the meantime, if there is any update from either Joe or Ken, that they fill us in and let us know what's going on. Okay, public comments. The microphone is open again for public comments. Ms. Fennell.
Mayor, sorry you don't feel well. I'll be brief. You stated that you're selling this property as unbuildable or undevelopable lots. I'd like, the owner of record, this Nicholson, I don't know who he is. I know who's living in 114 Hillside, and his name is not Nicholson, but Nicholson owns 114, 100, and he wants to buy the town property. And you don't think that he can develop that with 2 other pieces of property along in the same line? That's my concern. I don't know who Nicholson is, but I have seen development on Hillside. In fact, there's 32 new houses on that area since I moved here. Now, when you say 0.36 acres cannot be developed, that's a misrepresentation, because there's many houses up there that are on less acreage than 0.36. So please, I'd like it on the record that this is not a lot that can't be developed, and especially if the new owners owns 2 other lots adjacent. So you're going to be looking at townhouses, Mayor, and so will I. and it'll be right up to that marker. And any discussion of moving that marker should be tabled right away, because that would be an offense that just can't be tolerated. I watched the tape from December 28th, and there was a talk from Mayor Parker, some discussion about the placement of the marker, and maybe it could be moved. It's not going to be moved, ever. Thank you. Sorry you don't feel well.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Mr. Daniel, or Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had perhaps questions for you. How was the property marketed? Was it marketed?
This is public comment. I typically don't take direct press questions from
Was the
audience.
property marketed?
Since we were selling under the public lands law as undevelopable property, it was being sold only to the contiguous property owners. So only those contiguous property owners could buy that undevelopable property.
So you had to pass an ordinance in order to do that?
We did.
Pass the ordinance?
We did,
When?
in December.
Okay, December what? We usually catch these things and attend the meetings, and I wasn't made aware of it, so I don't know how many meetings you have. I know some towns operate differently, have 2 readings or whatever. What was the process with the notice? Although it was limited to contiguous buyers, when was the notice made public? When was it put in the paper and, all that, like the process of selling property?
Do you want me to address that?
Sure.
Judy, last year, the first step was approving by resolution contracts with the 2 adjoining owners. I would think that was in November?
That was in November. We did the ordinance.
Wait, let's just...
Okay. I don't have the exact date.
Yeah, the first step, which was listed on the agenda, was a resolution approving the contract with the 2 adjoining landowners. The contracts had clauses in them that said the contracts were subject to this particular committee introducing and adopting an ordinance authorizing the sales and subdivision of the lands. And in order to do that, it's listed on the agenda, and the introduction of the ordinance, Judy, was in...
December 3rd.
And that was noticed and put in the paper as all ordinances are required to do. And then we subsequently had a public hearing. Again, that was on the agenda pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, as all of these things are. There was a public hearing, and it was adopted on December
17th. It was adopted, and it was noticed on December 20th in the newspaper.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So what you're saying is that you notified the public had opportunity to comment on this on December 3rd, and December 17th you adopted it? You passed it. And so that's how you govern in Bedminster?
That's how we govern in the state of New Jersey when we pass ordinances.
Well, how much notice did you get, for the ordinance to pass? That was amongst you closed session, or?
No, this was all done in public in accordance with Title 40 in the state of New Jersey procedures for introducing and adopting ordinances.
Okay, because I was unaware, and then because of the stipulation that you had on it that only adjoining properties could purchase it, and I'm hearing that the sellers or the buyers, if you will, own a lot of the property there, I would strongly urge that you postpone the sale. I think that something so serious and so sacred should have been brought to our attention. I don't know how it was missed. I think one meeting was picked up, and then we heard about you all meeting tonight, and that's why we're here. I'm just like a stone's throw away. I would have been here. It's that important. I know of one of the parties that is purchasing the property. I didn't even know that they lived here, but anyway. The other thing was, she had it right that if he does own all of these properties, there's nothing stopping them from putting it together. It could be a whole new council that could change that with an ordinance, if you will. But I'm a little concerned about the way the property was sold. Even if it had some restrictions, did you hire a real estate company or an auctioneer or anything like that to sell it, or did you do the transactions as city council?
No, we had an appraiser, and that's our tax assessor, who values the properties throughout Bedminster Township, and he looked at those properties and came up with these values.
So was there any third-party appraiser or third-party auctioneer?
It was Mr. Kerwin, our assessor.
Because typically one would have a third party so that there wouldn't be conflicts.
The assessor has no conflict.
Well, it's the town's assessor.
He's independent. He reports to Trenton.
Okay, so he's not your assessor.
He's our assessor, but his ultimate authority is Trenton. He's assessor for a number of towns, not just this particular town.
Right, so then there is a conflict because he's an assessor for the town.
No,
So I'm just asking,
there's, in my opinion as a lawyer, there's absolutely no conflict. We've used Mr. Kerwin in the past on assessment issues. We rely upon him when we have tax appeals filed against us to come up with assessments.
And that may be true.
I'm not going to.
No, I understand. That may be true, but I would think an independent person would have been a much better sale, if you will. It just would have had more transparency. From all the other towns that I know, there's usually a third party called in. And they may not want to pay for the auctioneer or whatever, but that's even how we handled right next door. It's just so that there's fairness. And even in this case, where it was narrowed down to where, you know, resident A, B, or C could only purchase it, that's narrow in itself. But to have your own people determine the value and handle this transaction, it seems like it was something rushed through at the last administration. That's the appearance. So, I don't know. I urge you to postpone that. That's all I could suggest. I strongly urge that you postpone the sale.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
I'm a bit confused because I think we have this document, which I think is the resolution, is not detailed enough to what I've heard you say here. You know, and has that been properly vetted? So because all the restrictions, et cetera, I don't see specified in here unless you did a push call. And that's what we were talking about in terms of having an opportunity to review this and to review the sale. I think it was rushed over. Maybe it was a goodbye kiss for your for Mayor Parker, and I like Mayor Parker, but I truly believe, and I agree with Ms. Brown, that this was rushed through. And I'm not sure whether this was detailed enough or the public had, and I would have to ask Mrs. Fennell, was the public notified specifically of this prior to the thing that would give a person an opportunity to get all the details that's in the document, as well as to vet it properly. I really think that now this is not the only burial ground African burial ground in Bedminster, Wisconsin. We have one down in 206 that's on the National Registry. And the restrictions there are similar to what should have been here. But and that's the thing that we were talking about, is that it gives for the public, and especially the public that may or may not be in this restaurant, but also for some of your constituents that are here, it doesn't give them a fair opportunity to you will understand and vet this without it being pressured through in a few days. And I agree with Ms. Brown that this is awfully unusual. We've all been, you know, I was administrator for 2 townships here too as well. I'm a certified appraiser, so I'm in the business. I have been in the business all my career. So I'm just saying to you is that this doesn't meet that test of being transparent. And that's the reason we're just asking so that we can have an opportunity for others who don't have a particular interest in this property to review it so that they can give us some advice on what the procedure should have been and what it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Daniels, do you have a question for you? If you come back up, please. So, could you tell us a little bit more about the National Historic Registry?
The one for the property that's down on the contiguous to the president's property, the golf course?
Yes, please.
I don't know all the details about that, but I do have a person who did most of that work and who presented it to for it to have the national designation, Mr. Brown, whom I've worked with before. But he can tell you, but I know that they didn't go through anything like this. And that's within your jurisdiction, because isn't that burial ground too part of Bedminster Township?
It's Bedminster, but that is not on municipally owned property. So if this is going to be proposed to be included in the register, I think we'd like, I believe that would probably have to pass through us. So this way, if you've had discussions with the state or the federals on putting it on the registry, you certainly like to hear it and see what's involved, and if we can assist you in working with that, then
yeah, I agree, and I think it's something that we have to do collaboratively. But the other thing I was saying is, this document may limit a lot of the restrictions. I don't know what they're going to require. For instance, they were talking about are the new owners allowed to put fences up or barriers, etc., that really will distract from the sanctity of the area. It's a lot of things that I think you should take into consideration, because you can put up a fence and kind of put this little piece of property off, and it kind of sits out there with a sore thumb. But the other thing too as well is if there was some concern before, and we haven't had an opportunity, at least I have not had an opportunity to even review some of your past council meetings so that we can get a clue about what really happened and the process that you've gone through. And that's the thing that we're asking. We're saying, yes, we would like to work collaboratively with you to put it on both the state and the national registry, but we don't know what restrictions that you're already bound by if this contract has been consummated. And that's what we wanted to do in terms of getting information so that we'll all be on the same wavelength.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
I'll be short. Nancy Peabody, Plainfield. I just need a clarification. I understand that you offered it to the property owners, but there were 4 contiguous property owners. Do you know why the other 2 didn't want the property?
They didn't have an interest in it. There were negotiations with all 4. And
they were contacted, but they didn't give you a reason why they didn't want it.
They weren't interested, only these 2 were.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Peabody. We have Township. Oh!
I have a quick follow-up question. It came to light that you're the mayor, you reside directly across the street?
Yes.
So you weren't one of the properties that were allowed to purchase, correct? Because you don't touch. And you just took office, you got sworn in this January?
Yes.
And this is your first order of business, as far as something related to your personal property nearby you, within 600 feet of, or whatever the law is, where people need to be notified within so many feet of your home. So one of the first, coming into office, one of the first things that you were making sure gets pushed in the middle of winter is the purchase. You refused to make a motion. You were the only one who spoke after the first public session regarding this topic, and the attorney is pressuring you, or he is advising you to go ahead with the sale of this property. That's what I heard from the attorney right after you spoke last time. And the point that was being made from the audience was the fact that the conflict of interest of the town appraiser. That town appraiser gets a contract every year from mayor, from up here. They get rehired every year, or is that hired by the state? The person who gets hired as your appraiser, who does the, you know.
He's a current employee.
He's an employee, so who is his boss? The council.
He has tenure.
Correct.
But he was, so he was tenured, so he doesn't owe anything to this board.
Been here a long time.
Okay, so each year he doesn't get a new contractor every so many years where he's contracted.
Sullivan can address
No,
that.
He doesn't.
He's been with the town over 30 years.
But you do understand the appearance of a conflict of interest, which is being brought out by the public. So again, as another person interested, who was there June 22nd, who is watching this, I urge you to listen to the constituents, to give appearances of impropriety, to make sure they aren't there. If it's no, you know, what are they going to do in the middle of winter? They're not going to break ground on a cemetery. The other thing is, no one's got a chance to look at what you put into this ordinance, what they can build on it. When you say that the two neighbors are going to split it up and they can use it as part of their backyard, well, a lot of people have pools in their backyards and all sorts of things going on in their backyards. We don't know what they're going to be doing in their backyard, and there's nothing to prevent one from selling it off to the other and doing something like it was brought up with townhouses being on the property. So again, I would urge you to postpone the closing of this. And also, are they sitting in the audience? Are the people here that are interested in purchasing this property even here? Because I think you need to disclose to them that there's a public outcry, that there may be unhappy people all over the state of New Jersey who aren't happy with what's going to happen with this sale. So it's gaining them a little bit of backyard they can't do anything with. I do not see the harm in postponing this. What is the urgency? Is there an urgency to close this month? Something we don't know about? And that's a question. What is the urgency? Why can't we postpone?
Has it been closed?
There's contracts between the township and these two property owners. It has not been closed yet, but there are existing contracts. No more than if someone else contracted with a person to buy their house. There's an existing contract, and if the conditions of the contract are fulfilled, it will proceed to a closing. The township cannot unilaterally break a contract.
I have people that I'm renting a house to. They were waiting to have their home built, and I think they're going on their 4th month of a delay. People delay closings all the time when there are things of concern to the, I mean, this is going to come back to haunt the people that are buying it. It's on the record. This is a public record. If they have problems later with people protesting or unhappy or showing up in their backyard on June 22nd, and they're not akin to that, having a say about it, and having all the I's dotted and T's crossed on your ordinance, there's going to be problems, and it's going to come back, and it's going to cost the Township of Bedminster in court. So again, I would urge you to postpone a simple closing. You're an attorney. I don't know if you're a real estate attorney, but trust me, people wait all the time for closings. So unless there's something here that's not being divulged as far as favors or reason to have it done in the dead of winter, without any time for the public to weigh in, once again, delay the contract and let the citizens take a look at this ordinance. Thank you.
Good evening again.
Good evening again, Mayor.
Hi. My question is really kind of procedural. I'm wondering if all of the meetings are taped? All of your committee meetings are taped? And if so, they must be a matter of public information. I'm wondering if there are uncut tapes available through the Oprah process. And again, I just want to remind everybody that this is just an extremely sensitive matter, and so that's why we ask the questions that we do. And I just hope that everybody takes it seriously, because it is a very serious serious matter. It really is. We did not come here for any purpose other than to gain some information and to put on the record our request, because we feel as though that there are some things that need to be done and to be considered respectfully. And so, are copies of the contracts available? Are meeting minutes available? And again, is it, Mayor, through the Oprah process, or what would need to take place in order to get copies of such items?
All of that can be obtained from the clerk. All of the contracts were available for inspection at the clerk's office before they were approved by resolution, before ordinances were passed. You're being recorded right now, so all of these meetings can be looked at. And the
And you don't need an Oprah request for that. It's all on the website. If you look right behind you, right up there, that's right at the end of that light.
Yes.
That's the camera.
I should also add, Mayor, that you could look at the agendas, that Hillside Avenue was listed as new or old business for at least the better part of a year, Mayor. And that there were discussions by this particular committee at all of those meetings concerning whether to sell this, when to sell this, to whom to sell this. So it wasn't a process that simply took place in November and December. It was a process that took place for at least a year, if my recollection is correct, and the agendas can confirm that. And the minutes concerning those discussions about what to do with this property, I think Ms. Sullivan, go back not to November or December of last year, but at least to
The process was almost 2 years.
and the attempts to sell this publicly by auction probably go back at least 5-6 years.
Absolutely. Right.
So, the mayor,
Yes.
I was also born in Plainfield, New Jersey, and spent
Wonderful.
my first few years there on South
Then
End
can I count on
Parkway.
you, my resident, to bring me some documents, please?
So, I'm very familiar with Plainfield. In fact, 3 of my
Wonderful.
grandparents are buried in St. Mary's Cemetery there, so it's always good to see a Queen City resident. So
Thank you.
all of these are available and can be supplied by Ms. Sullivan. It's
Okay,
all
I just
on-
need to go back to,
It's all
thank
on
you.
file and was done
Thank you.
in accordance with the
Okay.
state statute and laws.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I just want to go back to one part, and that is, I heard a portion of the things are available for viewing. Are they available for us to get a copy?
Oh, sure.
Okay,
The clerk will email you anything you want that's available through Oprah.
excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor, for saying that we can hold that event every June 22nd. We're going to come to you. I'm going to ask you for a resolution annually. Okay?
You can ask us for a resolution annually, and as long as I'm up here,
Yes.
we'll get that resolution, Mayor.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are on to town committee comments. Ms. Stevenson, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I just want to thank you all for coming out and sharing your thoughts. I know it's a very serious and important issue. We've heard what you've had to say, certainly, and we'll take into account what you've said. I just want to stress that, in case it was lost in the legalese, if that's how you perceive it, that the burial ground is not being sold. It will remain. It is not the intention of this board to sell off that land. We're talking about the land where the former municipal building and DPW works was, where they had a junkyard. It was a scrap yard. There's been excavation out there. We don't take these things lightly, and certainly we have a history here at the site. It went out for auction several times. No one bid on it. So by state law, we could only go to the adjacent property owners. They were the eligible people to acquire. But again, I don't want anyone to have any false notions, and I don't know what information was disseminated before you showed up here today, but it was not a situation where we're selling off this sacred land. That's not what we would do, and then certainly not in play. But again, we've heard what you had to say. Thank you for coming out, and we do appreciate your thoughts on the matter.
Ms. Tucci.
Thank you. I echo your sentiments. I thank you for coming. I think your comments are extremely important. We're happy to hear from you at any time. Thank you.
Ms. Boreski?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if anyone recognizes me, but you shouldn't because I'm brand new. And I'm excited to know that the people in our neighborhood are participating, getting up in front of the cameras and microphones to speak from their heart. And I look forward to working with everybody to come to a resolution and to learning a lot more about how our town runs. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We do have an executive session. We will adjourn to the room over there. We will return. There may be one resolution that may be put forth after executive session. So there may be additional action that this Township Committee takes. But for now, can I have a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Do you want me at this? It's all personnel. And the tax appeal that have nothing to do with it.
You have nothing on the tax appeal. Take us back.
Okay, we're back on.
Okay, excuse me. We are back from executive session. It is 9:23. We are taking no further action on what we discussed in executive session. May we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.